a good opportunity today because of the readings to talk about faith. And as in many things that I talk about in the homily, I have to start out by saying there's no way to say everything there is to say about faith in a homily. So I'm going to I want to limit my homily to kind of a circling around the definition of faith. We use the word in so many different ways that as I hear people talk about faith, it seems that we are confused about what it is. And sometimes we mean it as the faith, those things that we are to believe. Sometimes we use it as a synonym for confidence or trust or belief. For instance, even that little saying of Jesus today can be confusing. I have to say, for myself, I struggled with that saying for a long time, for many years, and I still hear people say things to me. About this, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry tree be uprooted and thrown into the sea, and it would happen. I remember, and I'm smiling at myself here now, not at anyone else, but for years and years, starting when I was a kid, I used to think, okay, if I just believe hard enough, come on, move it. And I used to think, I have faith, I believe that thing's going to move if Now, I was a kid, right? But I still hear that kind of thing that, okay, what does that mean? If I have enough faith, I can just say, this car can move and that tree can... So it's a little confusing, and I'll talk about that mulberry tree in just a minute. Here's one of the things that the Catechism says about faith. Here's a phrase, personal adherence to God that we do in response to God's invitation. And so God, of course, always makes the first move. God invites, right? And so faith is responding to that invitation that God gives us, a personal adherence. We attach ourselves to God in response to His call, come, And that's actually a pretty good core definition of faith. Faith is our attaching ourselves to God in response to the invitation from God. Catechism says another thing about faith that I think is important as well. Catechism says that faith is, quote, both a gift from God, or a gift of God, and a human act. And so we wouldn't have faith if God didn't give it to us, right? So first of all, faith is a gift, but it's not only a gift. Otherwise, what purpose would it be to even talk about faith? Then it's that either God gives it to us or He doesn't, But no, it's a gift from God, but it's also, and at the same time, a personal act. We'll talk about that. So here are I have four kind of aspects of faith, and I think this would help us. First of all, this idea of orientation, what I just said. Faith is a response to God's invitation. It is an adherence to God. It's an orientation toward God, right? The person who awakens to faith begins to turn her life away from herself and to God. And we call this conversion. God is calling us. We one day wake up and we start to move our life toward God, and as opposed to toward our own whatever we want to do with our life, right? And this is kind of interesting. Occasionally I have people say to me, Father, I don't know why I'm the person. They always, when they got a question about the church or about God, they come to me and ask me, how come I'm always the one at the party that they say, oh, she'll know or he'll know, I admit sometimes that could be aggravating, but at its heart, I would say rejoice at that. It's a sign that others have seen that your life is oriented toward God, And so take it as a compliment, right? Or as a sign of something good. So the first thing about faith, it's an orientation toward God. We're moving our lives toward God. The second aspect is belief. The Catechism says the believer freely assents to the whole truth that God has revealed. Now, I want to be clear about this. Faith is not belief, it includes belief, right? You can't have faith without belief. So, how could one say, for instance, yeah, I have faith in so-and-so, but I don't believe what they tell me, but I have faith in them? No, right? That's silly. And faith includes believing in that person. And notice, not to pick and choose those things which we will believe. That's not faith in God. That's faith in ourselves, really. Oh, I believe this, I guess because it makes sense to me or something, but I don't believe this because it doesn't make sense or I don't like it or whatever. No. Faith involves belief, and belief is belief in all that God has said and taught, right? The believer freely assents to the whole truth that God has revealed. So we have orientation, belief, and then trust. Again, faith is not trust, it includes trust, okay? The Catechism says, this is one phrase, trusting in God, talking about faith, the believer trusting in God and cleaving to the truths he has revealed. So faith includes trust. And again, how could a woman say, I have faith in my husband, if she doesn't trust her husband? The two go together, right? So, faith is orienting our life to God, giving our life to God. It's believing what God has revealed to us about God himself, about the world, about what God created, about what is good and bad for the human person. In other words, what is moral and immoral. It's believing in the church, because Jesus started the church. So it's all those things, belief, all those things. And then finally, trust in God, in God's will, trusting that what God has told us is truthful, but also trusting that God has our good at heart in the commandments that God has made. So those are three pieces, right? Orientation, belief, and trust all make up faith. There's one other piece, and that's action. That's the final piece, right? We say the proof is in the pudding. We say put your money where your mouth is. Faith isn't really faith until it's acted upon. Again, this is what the Catechism says. Faith is possible only by grace and the interior helps of the Holy Spirit, but it is no less true that it is an authentically human act. Right? It's both a gift of God and a human act. What's that action look like? I think there are two pieces to that action. It's responding to a call from God. It can look like that. Or it can be obedience to God's commandments. Responding to a call, we hear God asking us to do something and we say yes. Especially if it makes us nervous, if it seems beyond our abilities, whatever. That is acting in faith. But it's also obedience. Obedience is not just saying, okay, God said it, I have to do it, I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't, That's a beginning level of obedience. But think about this. Obedience is really an act of faith. Obedience is saying, yes, maybe that is a difficult commandment, but I trust God's will for me. I trust that God would only command the good for me. And so I'm going to do that. That is ultimately what obedience is really about. It's an act of faith in God. There are two pieces, or two examples, just small examples I want to give of those. One, please forgive this, it's an example of my own, in my own life. Acting as a response to God's call. You know, when I came back from Ukraine, I was kind of mixed up on what I wanted to do with my life. I was thinking about going back to Ukraine and living there permanently. And I started to hear this call again to the priesthood. I had some rental property with a friend of mine and some other things that were kind of difficult. So finally I said one day, I said, Lord, I'm willing to go to the seminary. And to prove that, I'm going to make a formal application. But you have to do something with this house and something with a couple of other things that were going on, you know. Literally within 10 days, these two other things were taken care of, and I had the house sold. I still can't even believe it when I think about it, you know. And it sold in a way that we could never have imagined, you know. But I think until I had acted, I suspect anyway, nothing would have happened, right? And this is your mulberry tree. Do these kind of things. It doesn't mean that you could do something to wow the crowds, you know, that you could do something that Penn and Teller would be scratching their heads about. It's doing things that are beyond your own ability, right? No human being has the ability to say to a mulberry tree, get up and throw yourself into the sea. But God can do it. With God, all things are possible. And so when we act in faith, respond, right? There's no way, I don't think anyway, I could have done all those things that had to be done for me to be able to enter into the seminary. But when I took the step forward, what happened, you know? And so it's answering that call. And the other example I'd give you is one that many of you know well, Mother Angelica. Imagine what she did with no money, building a radio or a TV network, including all the tower and this, that, and the other thing. How many millions of dollars that took? And she did it with no money. In other words, it was her mulberry tree. There was no way that she, on her own, with no money, no experience, no et cetera, no education really to speak of, could do this thing. That's faith. Acting in faith allows God to act. And so the great works are God's, right? But it depends on our acting. So they ask Jesus, increase our faith. And Jesus basically tells them, the size of your faith doesn't matter. That's not the point, right? I might say it's the strength of our faith or our willingness to use our faith. But how do we build our faith, right? It's not the size so much, but I think we strengthen our faith in three ways. I engage, learn, and act. Those are the three words I think of. Be engaged with God. Prayer, reading, listening to the scriptures, devotions, the sacraments. Be engaged with God. Don't just on Sunday, oh, that's right, shoot, it's 8:45, we better get to Mass. Forgot about God all through the week, and I'll forget about him the next week, but we'll remember him for an hour here, you know? Or, oh my God, my sister has cancer, I better start praying. No, be engaged with God in an ongoing way, praying to God, reading the scriptures, celebrating the sacraments, coming to Mass, etc. Be engaged with God. And the second one, learn. Learn about your faith. The more you know about your faith, the more the little elements fit together. The more they make sense, the stronger you'll be in those. And then act. We call it a leap of faith. It's acting before we're ready, before we're comfortable, before we're confident, right? It's a leap of faith. Act, listen to the prompting. You know the promptings you get? Listen to them. Maybe God is asking me to do something. you know? Obey those things that seem difficult to obey, merely because God said them, and we have faith in God. So engage with God, learn about your faith, and act. The more you act, the stronger your faith will be. I want to give two quick examples of ways that we encounter, that people encounter a lot, and many of us encounter these things. One is tithing, and one is natural family planning. Basically, those who practice natural family planning say to themselves, okay, God, we want to live our lives for you, not just for ourselves, for our own pleasure, according to what we think is right. We want to live our lives for you. That's the first step, right? And we believe in you. We believe that you exist. We believe in what you have taught, you know, and so we believe you. And we trust that what you ask us to do is for our good. And so we're going to take a chance, you know. Yes, it's not absolutely certain that if we practice this, our children will come exactly when we want them, but that's not the point. Our lives aren't about us, they're about you. And so we will practice natural family planning. We will take the chance, we'll trust you, you know, and we will try to space our births according to what seems reasonable to us, but always leaving a big space open for you, that if you have a different idea, we're open to it, you know. And so a couple who practices natural family planning are living their faith. Tithing, it's the same way, you know. Okay, since my life is not about me, it's about you, God. That means my career is not about me, my money is not about me, my other material possessions. And so I believe in you, God, that you exist. I believe that what you want for me is good. Yes, I'm really nervous about giving you the first 10% of my income, you know. That makes me extremely nervous. But I trust you. I trust you that you wouldn't ask something of me that is not good for me. And so I'm going to do it. I'm going to act. These are just two brief examples, right? But they're examples that we encounter, many of us, or most of us, all the time, right? And so just quickly, faith. Faith is an orientation to God. It's belief in God and what he has taught, and it's trusting that what God has taught us is good for us. And then finally, it's acting, right? And how do we build our faith? How do we strengthen it? We keep engaged with God. We keep learning about our faith, and we keep acting in faith.